Hey, folks, want to welcome you back to the Ditch That Textbook Digital Summit. I'm Matt Miller, and we are off to another session where we're going to be talking about more of the great topics that we've had in this summit. You know, the kinds of things where we talk about technology and pedagogy and just all of this stuff that you can use and will inspire you right away. And I am really interested in getting into this discussion because I'm going to be kind of learning right along with you. And I know that this is the kind of thing that you're going to be able to apply right away, that it's going to be really practical and it's going to save you time and frustration and heartache and all of that stuff. And so we're going to be talking to the master of all protocols, and we'll find out what that means a little bit more here in a little bit. So this is Jon Corippo, and I know this is going to be a great conversation with him. Jon, can you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is John. I'm a formerly disgruntled sixth grade student, looking to be an adult who can make school better for human children. I spent and it depends on how you count, about 16, 17 years in the classroom at various different levels. I've been a high school administrator. I've been an assistant soup at the county level. I've been a IT director. Various different hats have been worn. Got all the little checkbox things: Apple Distinguished Educator, Microsoft Innovative Educator, Google Certified, all that kind of stuff. But really, I'm really interested in helping teachers make their career more effective and more fun.
Yeah, I
There's not a lot of people that will say, "I don't want more fun, please." No, no more fun. And I
right.
would not like to be more effective. I want to grade papers all weekend and continue to be the same level of effectiveness. So that's kind of my jam.
and I think that this topic that we're going to talk about is a perfect fit into that. And I've got to tell you, whenever I work with teachers and we get a number of questions, and one of them I like to ask is, what's the biggest barrier to doing what it is that you want to do in the classroom? And every single time without fail, they always say that it's time. Time is
Yeah, yeah.
always the big thing. Yeah, exactly. And so I know that this whole idea of protocols, which is going to be probably a big part of the discussion that we have today, this is the kind of thing that can save teachers time. And like you said, let them enjoy their career more and be more effective without having to reinvent the wheel every single time they sit down to lesson plan. So can you start out just kind of like giving us the 101 of the general idea of this thing?
Yeah, so the common misconception, because I've been this person, I've been this teacher where you say to yourself, "Hey, I'm not sure I want to do the workbook this year. I'm not sure that I want to go through the whole workbook." And I'll tell you honestly, I'm a little bit of an ADHD teacher. I get bored doing the same thing, if that means that we're going 1.3 to 1.4 to 1.5. It's hard on me. I'm a creative spirit. I want to have some joie de vivre every day. Like, oh, let's do something crazy. And around 1999, I was working in a two-school district, and they didn't have any director level people. They had a superintendent, two principals. That was the end of the admin team. Okay, and for whatever reason, they just did not send me textbooks. And so I had this, and we've talked about this before, I had this tension because part of me I want kids to show academic growth. We're going to do this for 180 days, at least in California, it's 180. And I don't want to do 180 days of heavy lifting. And at the end of the year go, they're not good test takers. I don't want to be that. I want this. But I also want, like I said, the joie de vivre, rock and roll, chaos, we don't know what's coming, handcrafted thing. And so I started on a really, really long journey that's still, I mean, it's literally still unfolding right now in front of me. But basically, the thing is, when you talk about getting rid of textbooks, like in your book, which I've told you a couple times, when I read your book, it feels like I'm reading my own life story. On this, we went through the same progressions. Um, Most people's reaction and mine was, wow, that means a lot of lesson planning. That means I'm going to have to spend millions at Teachers Pay Teachers. That means I'm going to have to develop um, totally my own teacher's manual, like my own answer keys, and it feels like this gigantic, overbearing enterprise that you're about to enter. And bear in mind, I started this process in 1999, right? So we're 6 years from 6 years from YouTube. We are 5 or 6 years from Twitter even existing. Potentially, I don't know what the due date is. So I was really starting this just out of pure passion and disappointment with being. I don't want to be the guy who does 5 periods a day of the same thing. 1.2. Everybody on Wednesday we're going to do 1.2. When Thursday we're all good. I couldn't handle it.
Yeah. Yep. I can totally sympathize with that. And now, like, kind of like what you were saying, YouTube didn't exist then, Twitter didn't exist then, and now we have all these extra resources at our fingertips to be able to do the same kind of thing, right?
Yeah. And then people like you and I have a decade of experience of what does this look like. So that's where the protocols start coming in. So now I'm going to start taking it. That was you and me kind of doing the middle of the Venn diagram. Now I'm going to start skewing. So over time, I came up with a few of these different little, and at the one point I was calling them packages. Okay. And so the logic would be if you and I were both taking a Photoshop class and we had an assignment and our job was to design a fake magazine cover, which seems like a pretty cool Photoshop thing. Are our magazine covers going to look identical? Oh my God, I hope not, right? But will we both use and select a font?
Yes, we would.
Well, we have theoretically some gradients and some overlays we use. We're going to manipulate images. So I started thinking in terms of, wow, this is really a workflow. And if you look up Photoshop workflows, Adobe Premiere workflows, Final Cut workflows, if you want to make a video using lightsabers, there are certain key ingredients that you will always do. You need a green screen, you need a chroma key, you know, these are the things. But will our lightsaber videos look the same?
They better not.
Yeah. If they do, we got problems. So the idea is that in a lot of industries, there's this concept of a workflow. If I'm going to set up, if I'm going to go into FileMaker Pro and I want to set up a database, there are certain things that you always do. They're inescapable. And so then I started looking at that in my own practice, and I realized that my first quarter report on ancient man was a totally different process for the human children than the second quarter report, which was ancient Egypt. And yet in a third quarter, we had a totally different process for ancient Greece. And then finally, a totally different process for ancient Rome. And I thought, oh my God, I'm asking my kids to relearn the process every single time. It would be like if you took a cooking class and you had one day for soup. Now, you're not going to do any soup follow-up. The next day is wedding cakes. What's the transfer? And then the day after that is deep pit barbecue. And then the day after that, salads. You're not giving people any reps. They're not getting any chance to fail forward, to ideate, to go, oh, I see what you're doing there. Hold on. Because you and I both, I think, Matt, are big fans of the idea that second rep is way faster than the first rep.
Yeah, absolutely. Better be. Yeah.
Better be. Almost anything you do, the second time you do it, you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that again. But we were constantly putting kids' brains in the mode of first attempt, first attempt, first attempt. And what kids take from that, I worry, is that no matter what I do, I'm not that good at it. And the part we teachers can control is we don't need to do anything as a first attempt. So I started falling into these kind of packages, as I was calling them, patterns, workflows. And I realized that when I got my sixth graders working on the package first quarter, it took 4 or 5 weeks to get the first package in. When we came back into the same package again, we just changed it from ancient man to ancient Egypt. But the product was falling in the same flow. Boom, all of a sudden we're down to like 3 weeks. We do ancient Greece, 2 weeks. Ancient Rome, some of the kids were done with a much better looking product in 3 or 4 class periods. So what happens is their workflow is increasing their speed. Okay. And so that really led me to this idea of protocols, that I have a protocol for doing reports. I have a protocol for doing lit circles. I have a protocol for teaching Latin roots. And I started thinking in terms of, wait a minute, now we're not even talking about grade centric, because how different is Latin roots in 6th grade than Latin roots is in 8th grade? right? This is another big teacher fear. I've got my filing cabinet, Matt. Matt, I've got a filing cabinet, and it's full of tests and answer keys, but it's only sixth grade.
Oh, and so you can't use that with anything else.
Everything else is gone. It's like boom, out the window. So so now what I'm thinking is, okay, these protocols for people that are independent or homeschool or multi-grade, the protocol's the same. Guess what? I've learned this. Kids in fourth grade and seventh grade, their writing skills are about the same level of bad. Okay, it's not like
there's some truth to that.
Now there's some different metacognitive skills because the kids are older, right? But in terms of the technical pieces, they're still going to struggle with apostrophes. I still can't say don't use the antecedent. They can't. They don't know the pronouns or prepositions. There are really key things that are the same. So that's really helped me focus in on this idea that a really good workflow works in most any grade level.
Yeah, yeah. You know, as you've been describing this, first of all, I started to realize that I used some of this already and I just didn't have a name for it. I didn't like one of the big ones that I thought of was my timed writings, teaching high school Spanish. You know, we would do timed writings every Friday, and it would be you would write for 5 minutes nonstop about whatever topic you want, use words that you're familiar with and you're comfortable with, and it's a kind of a mark of fluency. And I didn't have to reinvent the wheel with that every single time.
Friday morning, you roll in and you're like, people, time fluency, let it rip. Today's word is, and they're off to the races.
Yes,
My step is low. They know what's coming. Everybody's happy.
Yes. And so I love that. As you were describing this and you're saying once they've got this package or this protocol and they've done it once and they're familiar with the steps, then what happens in my mind is that we become more efficient with our time. So now we don't have to, it's like you were saying, if they can do it faster the second time, it's like, I remember building a deck off the back of my house, and me and my dad were building this deck. And once we got done, we were like, man, we learned a lot of lessons.
We were going to build another one of these. We could probably really knock it out.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh man, this could have taken us 2 days less with what we know now. And so all of a sudden, in a 9 weeks or a semester or whatever, instead of doing 5 brand new, learn everything fresh type of packages, you might have been able to do 7 of the same kind of protocols over and over again, but the information is all new and different. And so there's still some novelty to it, but there's also a familiarity with it so that you don't have to go and do things completely from scratch.
And the way we've gotten busy with saying this with some of my friends and I that are doing this in their active classrooms is the workflow is the same every day. The content changes, but the product is roughly the same. So for me, the granddaddy of all of this was the old 8 parts that I started in around 2000, which basically, and it's taken me literally 15, 16 years to get this good at explaining it, because for a long time, it was just a thing that worked. It just worked. And then I kept reflecting on it, and then other people did it. And I went, oh my God, this is actually a departure in the pedagogical approach to teaching and learning. I didn't realize it at first. I just thought it was fun. So basically the way 8 parts goes, and if anybody's listening, they can just Google Jon Corippo 8 parts, and there's several blogs about people that have instituted this as well. And it's the original protocol, because basically in a typical textbook environment, you're going to do 1 part of speech per week. 1 part of speech per week. You do worksheet, assessment on Friday. I yell at you because you got an F, but you've never seen this test before. We move on. It's about 1 part of speech per week, because guess how many weeks there are in a quarter, Matt? 9. We do about 1 a week. Here comes the quarterly assessment. You get 1 chance at the quarterly assessment. Some people get an A, some people get a B, some people get a C. This is straight from a book called The End of Average by Todd Rose, which is amazing. Shout out to Bill Selleck for sharing that with me. It's changed my life. But even Bloom went back in the old days and said, Benjamin Bloom, when you give a linear approach to content, a bell curve will always appear. We are lame enough in our understanding of this that we think that a bell curve is a natural outcome of student effort or academic prowess, when it turns out that a bell curve is a natural outcome of people getting 1 chance at something.
Huh. Wow.
So think about this. If you have a football team, do you really want them to practice that play one time and then try it in the game? How many reps you want, Matt?
As many as you can get.
Yeah, like bonkers. Like you want like
Yes.
80 reps and then it's still
Yes.
not perfect. But in the classroom, we do this. We talked about nouns. I can't believe you're not doing it. So 8 parts goes like this. We're going to do all 8 parts of speech in one sitting.
Ooh,
The first,
I found an image of this. Keep talking. I'm going to share
yeah,
my screen and put it up there.
okay. So you get all 8 parts of speech in one sitting. Yeah, it's super. It's nothing fancy, right? It's nothing fancy, but you do all 8 parts of speech in one sitting, and then you have the kids do some synthesis, which is to write a paragraph using all 8 parts of speech. But the difference is here, I'm doing all 8 parts at once, and the good old I do, we do, you do model. Okay, so the first 2 or 3 days, I'm just giving the kids the answer and making sure they can write it down. The kids start making the correlation between what it is and how it works really quick. Now, Matt, in your browser, I want you to search for times it's okay to say the F word.
For real?
Yeah, for real. Times it's okay to say the F word.
It's okay to. Oh, there it is. Say the F word. Okay.
Yep. And then scroll into images.
Pardon me, John.
It's okay.
I don't
And
want to
then
go back and edit this video.
it's okay. It's totally clean. So click on in the top row.
Okay.
See the little boy in the top row? Right there. Click on
Right
that.
in the middle.
Yep, that's you got it.
Okay.
So I want you to
Oh,
imagine
wow.
this picture, which is latex paint, and the boy and his brother have painted themselves up pretty well. Find me 3 nouns in the picture. Find me 3 verbs in the picture. This would work really great in a Spanish class. Am I wrong?
Oh, this would be amazing in a Spanish class.
Right?
Yes.
3 nouns, 3 verbs, totally scaffolded. And then click on the picture. See the tractor. Go 2 to the right from the little boy and click on that one.
Yes. This one.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Times
Yeah.
it's okay to say the F word. Click on the
Uh,
one to the left of the little boy in the paint. Here's another good one. I actually had a girl that cried one time, and I was like, "No, it's totally photoshopped. That dog is not flying into the Grand Canyon." Um, but the idea is find me 3 nouns, find me 3 verbs. You know what? When I do this, some kids will say dog, other kids will say blue heeler, and I'm like, "Now tell me more about blue heeler."
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What a teachable moment, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the I do, we do, you do goes like this for about 2 or 3 days. I give the kids all the answers and then they write a short paragraph and label each part of speech. But this is pretty much my whole lesson plan until about Halloween, which gets us into the next thing. What's my prep on this? I need a stack of photocopies about yay tall, right? I need about 1,000 blanks on this. And certainly, that was back in the day. I could make it into a Google Drawing, which shout out for Cheryl Morris at Guster for Lovers. She's made a Google Drawing of it. Marlena Heburn's made a couple versions of it. But basically, it's the same thing every day. And here's what I've noticed. I've used this in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade. And what happens is the first day takes about an hour. By the end of the first week, they're down to about 15 minutes. Every week they come in and I'm like, 8 parts, let's rock. And they
Mm-hmm.
say things like this, what's the picture today gonna be? Because they're creating something. They're not just filling in a blank.
mm-hmm.
And guess who gets a good score? Everybody gets a good score.
Mm-hmm.
And then somewhere around 2 weeks into this process, one of the kids will go, man, how many of these are we gonna do?
Yeah.
And I go, we'll stop when everybody gets an A on Fridays.
Nice. Okay. So I got a question for you on this because
Yes.
my protocols, so to speak, when I was in the Spanish classroom and I was doing some of this at least, and I so wish I could do more of this now that I'm learning a little bit about it. But
Right.
I would do my timed writing on Fridays. I would have, I mean, there was a couple of years there where I had things pretty well regimented, like all throughout the week. And I started to get kids after a while that would say, are we going to do something different? Are we
Mhm.
going to mix things up a little bit because it's starting to get a little bit. Now, I didn't have any of the when it's okay to say the F word pictures. So maybe that was like the missing ingredient, that maybe there was like an engagement factor, a fun factor that was
Always
totally
look at
missing in all this.
To me, it's always a Venn diagram. Over here, I have super safe scaffold, right? And over
Mm-hmm.
here, I have crazy unexpected thing. Now, I'll give you a language arts thing that I think you'll really appreciate as a person who's taught languages. So we did Latin roots. And I had them on a roll. Click, 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 click. It was like this. And you're right. Somewhere around second week in November, they'd be like, dude, we got 18 more weeks of this. You're
Right.
killing me.
Right. Yeah.
So that's where I just ingested some levity. Okay. All of a sudden, week 14 was Hawaiian roots.
Oh, the Hawaiian
I
roots.
Hawaiian roots. I totally changed the whole thing up. So we did our normal workflow, but on Hawaiian roots. And one year when we were a younger family, we all went over to Hawaii. We're at a little coconut side stand by the side of the road, and the purveyor had this little sheet of the history of the Hawaiian language, which, by the way, has only 12 letters,
Wow.
and, and then the pronunciation guide for that long A, short A business, right? And the hard E and things like that. And then about 18 words. And for some reason, I grabbed that and I took it home with me. And I'm going along through my school year and I'm like, 18 words. Sounds just about like a week's worth of Latin roots. So
Mm-hmm.
it was total chaos. We used the normal workflow. We just injected Latin into it. I mean, Hawaiian into it. And it was great because I asked the kids to begin with, there's only 12 letters. Do you think this is going to be easier or harder than English? And there's like, well, there's only 12 letters, so it's got to be easier.
Yeah.
Aha, problem with running out of letters is you end up with things like Kenny Popo Piku instead of football.
Right.
Or you end up with Huma Huma Nuku Nuku Apu Aa, which means fish that grunts like a pig with a needle coming out of its head. That's the Hawaiian state fish. So the point is, I just injected some chaos to break up the monotony, but the workflow was the same.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
The workflow is the same. So that's some of the thing. Another angle for that would be Matt. The other one that we do is the worst presentation ever, worst PowerPoint ever. And so instead of spending 3, 4, 5 weeks to teach kids how to make PowerPoints, there's actually a really funny video by a guy named Don McMillan called Death by PowerPoint. It's on YouTube. It's about 7 minutes long. He lists about 10 or 12 rules, things to not do when you're making PowerPoints, but it's a stand-up comedian. So I just have the kids, again, watch the flow here. I play the video, I pause after each error, make a paper slide of what he just did wrong. Make a paper slide. Notice I did not say the death words. Take notes on.
Oh,
Because
right.
kids like you and me will not take notes.
Right.
We will not. I got this. But the problem is there's 13 variations, so we'll forget some. As a teacher, we want to tell them to record it. So I just say, make a paper slide of what was wrong. Too many bullets, bad color scheme. And then, so it takes 15, 20 minutes to go through that. And then I tell the kids, okay, you have the 12 rules from Don McMillan, world-known expert, 31 million views on Death by PowerPoint. I want you to make a bad slideshow. You need to break one rule on each slide. You only need to break 6. Guess what? Some kids will go for 12, but you only need to break 6. And they're going along doing their thing. They're making the slides. They're so engaged that they're not realizing what's coming, which is a bad presentation. And so now I just, at the very end, I go, by the way, we need to present these. You only get, 2 minutes each. And the kids are like, I don't know how to present it. And I go, everybody switch with somebody else. You're going to present a random one that you've never seen.
Ooh, I
Now
like
they're like,
that.
whoa, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Laugh and they giggle, and nobody has to own their slides because their bad slides everybody knows I didn't make these bad slides. These are some other goofballs bad slides. But it sets us up for a template, which turns into Iron Chef, which is you got 10 minutes to make one slide. It needs to look pretty. Remember the 10 or 12 rules. You're going to make one slide about early man, this aspect, petroglyphs, this aspect, stone tools. You give them a nice web page where everything is sorted out. They have 10 minutes to make one slide. All of a sudden, you're in the Iron Chef protocol. If you do one Iron Chef a week instead of lecturing, really all you need is the right, and I'm going to go be aggressive, you only need the right Wikipedia article. Now, some people will say, just don't. It's
Right.
Wikipedia put Encarta out of business. So how's that? Is it good enough? Read Daniel Pink. Wikipedia put Encarta out of business. They didn't do it because the facts were bad. Okay. So you can take almost anything. One of my favorites on the West Coast is tri-tip. It's a cut of meat that we enjoy out here that Midwesterners don't enjoy as much, or Texas, it's brisket. It's a different cut. You can just look up tri-tip, see how much you can learn about it in 10 minutes. It's crazy. It's crazy. So I have the kids again start with a super low level of we usually start with the history of McDonald's or the history of Big Macs or In-N-Out Burger or White Castle or anything like that. And each kid does one slide, 10 minutes. But now I've got this package in. It's a package. Once a week, we're going to do this on a US president. Once a week, we're going to do it on the math term of the week. Once a week, we're going to do it on a famous scientist. And so my prep is almost nothing. Once I've got those Google Slides where I want them, I just put them into Google Classroom or email them to the kids. Go. My prep is almost nothing. How many minutes to build? 10 minutes to build, and then 2 minutes to present per group. So I did the math that way because in about a half an hour, you can have your kids go through a content, which leaves me 20 minutes to get into a Socratic seminar or have them do little quizzes. And in one period, I've got almost no prep, but every Wednesday for the rest of my year is checked off. Iron Chef, Iron Chef, Iron Chef, Iron Chef. And I can go with the flow. I'm not stuck with 1.4, 1.5.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you this. Talk to the higher order thinking naysayers. They're going, oh, all of these slides, they're all DOK level 1. It's all fact regurgitation and all of that.
Yeah, but I would agree on this part. Okay. Doing quick and dirty slides is DOK 1. So what would writing down what the teacher wrote on the board be as a DOK? 0.5?
DOK 0. Yeah. -3.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty ugly, right? If you think that this isn't higher order thinking, I'd like you to tell me what you think listening passively and writing down what I wrote on the board is. Because if this is low, what this does give is it gives kids choices of fonts, color schemes, picking imagery. There are at least certain elements that are way higher on Bloom's. In terms of the details, nah, it's still details. But in terms of the I was going to say memorability, but I don't think that's the right term. People will remember these much more deeply than the best lecture you've ever done, and it's because they have personally engaged the building of the thing.
Yeah.
And I will give you an example. I had a group of my language arts kids. We were doing the top 20 grammar errors. Okay, so this is the mindset, and I think you and I talked about this in Denver a while back at ISTE. You can teach this way. I'm going to go through 180 standards because that's how many there are. There's about a standard a day. Or you can teach this way. I'm going to eliminate the top 20 errors. Now, Andrea Lunsford and I don't know the Connors guy, but Andrea Lunsford and Connors made a thing called the top 20 grammar errors. Now, this is the way a classic teacher is going to deploy this. We're going to do one error how often, Matt? A week, right?
One a week, yes.
So boom, there goes my whole freaking year. So that means I can't do it. In an Iron Chef world where I have packages and up tempo, I can go like this. Table 4, you've got vague pronoun reference. You've got missing introductory comma. You've got extra introductory comma. You've got wrong word, and you've got whatever. So each table is going to be doing 5 this week, which means if there are 20, I'm done in how many weeks, Matt?
4.
I just collapsed. Yeah, you're good. I just collapsed 20 weeks of 1 week into 4 weeks of 5 a week, right? And this is a true story. I had the kids going, doing this thing, and the one group's presenting, and the group that did missing comma in an introductory element, I said comma on purpose. All the other teams, the person that was in charge of wrong word, because I don't teach misspelling. Misspelling is too low. Wrong word is the pinky up way to do it, right? So the wrong word people are going, oh my God, wrong word. And the kid's like, what? And they're like, coma, you put coma. And he's like, but it's not spelled wrong. And they said, it's the wrong word. They internalized that at a level that was just off of the charts that I would have never gotten by standing in front of them saying, I will take from the Bible of grammar. Rule 5 is thou shalt not use the wrong word. Who's going to remember that? Just the 3 or 4 kids that care.
Yeah.
But in this case, it was a beat down. The wrong word kids are like, oh my God, you're so busted. It created an endorphin release, a dopamine release.
Oh, yeah.
memorable moment that is never going to get done by just repetition, which, I
Yeah.
mean, repetition is a valid method, but I think we pushed it as far as we can.
Yeah. And speaking to the how you said if you have 180 standards that you're supposed to get to and that's one a day. I mean, if you think about how nuts that is, how nuts that really is, that if you're supposed to teach it at that surface level all the way across the, and I know you can get to multiple standards in a day or whatever, but I mean, the reality is that if you want to do deep, memorable work where kids are actually going to be able to apply this later on in life, then if you go deeper on a handful of things, or if you make it memorable instead of teaching at that surface level. So that's like, after a while, when I was teaching high school Spanish, it was like, I could teach all of the obscure, strange verb tenses that you use every once in a while, or I could really focus on, you were talking about the 20 errors. I could focus on the big
Right.
100.
Yeah. Any
The
English,
100.
sit down and look at your pile of papers this way. I'm not
Yeah.
going to look at all the individual errors. What I'm going to look at is the top 3 errors this week. And I'm going to mini lesson those things out of existence.
Mm-hmm.
I just want you to do the math on this. And if you can wipe out 3 meta errors a week in 10 weeks, you've knocked off the top 30 errors.
Mm-hmm.
That is a gigantic paradigm shift.
Yeah.
What's going on? So, I mean, it's a totally different way of thinking versus, but we did the worksheets for section 2. And I gave the assessment for section 2, and I don't get why they're not getting it.
Right. Exactly. And it's like, if you and if you think about it, if you do it that way too, what happens when a kid gets a paper back and you did mark all of those, every single little error that you can think of? Because we're like, as teachers, we're hardwired to do that. It's like we just
Well,
we feel like that's our
the word I
job.
use is codependent. Right?
Okay, I'll go for that. Yeah.
We
And
tend
so,
to do to other what was done to us, and
yeah,
that doesn't make it right. And
no.
we
And then,
equate these activities with being a good teacher, and I don't think that's accurate.
no, I don't either. And then what happens when the kid gets the paper back? Overwhelm and shutdown. You see this
I'm out.
bleeding paper.
They're
Yeah.
like,
And
oh,
it's like there's all you as the teacher, you're thinking, oh, there's all of this feedback on that paper. Oh man, if they would just fix all of these errors and fix them in their brain. Well, first of all, they can't do all of that in one sitting. And
too
second
much
of all,
cognitive load.
yeah.
And you might only point that error out one time with no way to not make the error anymore. Awesome. That sounds great.
Yeah. But if you can just see, that's why after a while I quit doing the line by line, every single little mistake type of thing. And I started doing this crazy thing that saved me a lot of grading. And it was called walking around the room. And so instead of sending, writing assignments home as homework, we would work on them in class. And I would go up and down, up and down. And
But
I
you
would
got
stop.
a lot better result by giving immediate feedback than by waiting 2 weeks.
And by giving a digestible amount of feedback too. So I would stop and I would, get down on one knee next to them on their computer and I would do the sandwich compliment. Oh, you're doing this really well. Here's one thing you can work on, but keep going because this looks really great. And so there's that one little thing. And now all of a sudden, it's just like what you were saying, 1 a week times 36 weeks. And now all of a sudden you've internalized 36 things. Whereas if you get 36 bleeding red papers back, you internalize nothing, or not very much anyway.
Yep. Well, I'll go even farther, Matt. I quit giving the essays back. Now, I just was getting going on my Googly skills, but when we would do our daily quick write, this is pre-Google Classroom, so I didn't have an easy way to collect them, and I didn't need 150 in the inbox every day. But when we would do our daily quick write, whether it was on paper or digitally, I wouldn't even give them back.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yeah.
They're not going to read them.
Yeah.
Now, this is key because some people listening might now be like, oh my gosh, John, you're not telling them how they're doing. Yes, what I'm doing is coaching the class at that point. Once the class gets to a certain skill level, then individual feedback kicks in. But for 4, 5, 6 weeks, it's just volume. I'm just looking at what's the class doing. Take a sports metaphor. How good is it if you take your best 4 football players and you love them because they're all geeky and they lift weights all the time, and you only work with them because the other ones are lazy? How's your season going to go?
Right.
It's going to be pretty ugly. So my logic is the same way a sports scenario, not just football, any sports. Lots of feedback, lots of fast turnarounds. And as their skill level comes up, they become more skilled at what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I just
Then I
say,
can have detailed conversations. Then I can.
yeah.
And yes, you can just say.
Thank you. I have had this blog post like simmering inside of me for a couple of weeks now. That's probably going to happen pretty soon now because of this conversation. And it's based on this, that we have, as educators, we have this guilt and this shame about doing things that are low prep, that don't take a lot of time for us to do. They may have huge impact, but we still don't feel teachery enough because we haven't slaved over our lesson plan book and our red pens and all of that enough. And so you get things like auto-graded work. Now, should you base your entire teaching career on auto-graded work? No, you shouldn't. But there are some things where if you can put it into a Google Forms quiz or a formative or a quizzes that they can run on their own or something, and kids get that immediate feedback, you can take care of some of that low-level stuff without having to lift a finger, and you still get the same results, So I think we need to get over that guilt and that shame of, I didn't put enough work into this. I didn't create this all on my own, blah, blah, blah. When
Can't be a good teacher because I haven't been given enough homework.
Right.
I'm not rigorous enough. So in Ditch That Homework, you interviewed me for some ideas for along these same lines, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
I would just tell everybody that might be watching, this is about a mosaic. It's a mosaic. And the key on a mosaic is if you take out all the red, it looks weird, right? But it's not just all red. So it's a mosaic. All the colors have to work together, and there's layers and interactivity and all these things. So in the book, we talked about the idea that that you can use quizzes and things in place of worksheets, right? So
Yes.
I've even taken that farther. That's one of the new protocols that I've really been honing, called the Fast and the Curious. And the idea is, back in the old days, I would on Friday morning, the kids would come in and they get their new spelling. Excuse me, their new spelling words, right? New spelling words. And I would spend 30 or 45 minutes doing this. Collaboration. Collaboration. Next word. Synthesis. Synthesis.
Did you do it in that voice?
Oh yeah, I would try to be annoying as possible. But either way, there was 30 or 45 minutes of the new work, the new words, making sure they've got it, making sure they're doing the thing. I never handed them the words because they needed to touch the words themselves, right? It's not enough to just hand them the list, because they will damn well not look until next Thursday, which is the test. So I had to force them through a sieve, okay? And then that led to me going to CompUSA. I'll let that sit there for a second. CompUSA, and I bought a program for my Mac, Mac OS 7, that allowed me, maybe it was OS 8. It made me not iOS, OS, and it allowed me to make custom word searches. I thought it
Wow.
was so cool.
Innovation.
Typing all these words in all weekend, typing in word lists. And then in reality, on the word search, the kids are just tracing each other's word searches, right? So when you go digital, what happens is they copy paste, or they screenshot, or they just email it to them. So I thought, how can I break that cycle of me spending a lot of time and the kids spending very little time? So that's where the Fast and the Curious protocol comes in. Kids can simply, they come into class on Monday. I've got my 15 words loaded up in a Quizzes or a Socrative, and we just go. I just test them. I just go. And guess what? If they get 50% right, I've only got 50% left to teach. I'm halfway done.
There you
It's
go.
Monday at 8:35 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do a mini lesson. Boom, boom, boom. Here's the ones you guys didn't do that good on. And I'm going to give them the test again. Do you know why? There's no stack of papers. There's no inbox on the way out. I'm going to test them. I'm going to test them again. I get a Google spreadsheet on every rep by each kid's name. Guess what I'm going to do the next day, Matt?
You're probably going to test them again.
Hit them again. And then on Wednesday,
Probably
again.
do it again. Yeah.
Because this is low level. and I'm just going to rep them until they get it. It's just like at soccer practice. You run around the cones every day. Why? To get faster.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to rep them until everybody passes. That means I don't need to send home the word search. I don't need to send home the fill in the blanks. I don't need to grade it or not grade it. And I will stand by this statement. The vast majority of parents would stop asking for homework if they knew what really happened to it in the grade book.
True.
Because what you're getting, the vast preponderance of homework is getting graded smiley face, star,
Mm-hmm.
or check.
Mm-hmm.
They do not realize that most of us are going like this. Oh, you turned in your homework. It's graded.
Right.
People don't know that. If parents knew that, we'd have a flip going on homework. They would be
Mm-hmm.
pissed.
Yep.
So what I'm doing is I'm taking 8 or 10 minutes a day, and I'm making sure everybody knows. That's called mastery learning. That is the highest level of learning. And I'm now eliminating the need to do all these worksheets, photocopy these worksheets, collect all these worksheets, and that gives me a lot more time to work on higher order thinking skills. That gives me time to kick in. For everybody who would said, I would love to do 20% time, but I don't have time. Dude, you have time now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've probably done that thing probably 30 times this year. And every single group of adult learners, I make them do a test on Nintendo because they get slaughtered. They have no idea what's happening. The first rep, on average, they get 44 to 52% right. Okay. I do the mini lesson. I hit them with the exact same test about 10 minutes later. On average, they get 91 to 94% right. 30 disparate groups up and down the state. I've had groups as small as 8. I had one group of 700 teachers. Okay.
Yikes.
First rep, 700 people in a quiz is. First rep, 3 got 100%. Second rep, over 300. I'm like, why are you still teaching the old way?
Right.
What are you doing? And
Right.
how long did it take me to grade? And this is only 2 reps. What if we do this again tomorrow and again the next day? How much will you nail it when I give you a paper test? You will own it.
Yeah.
And then again, for the low DOK crowd, that's like, well, that's great, John, but you're just, facilitating bold words. No, because after we do 3 or 4 weeks of this, I'm going to guess what's going to happen. Table 4, you're making the test next week. Table 5, you're making I just, by pawning it off to the human children, I've just made it a higher order thinking activity because they have to have the right pictures. They have to have sensible question stems. They have to have good grammar. All those things come into play now. And it's a public failure if they don't do well. Plus, I am totally okay with them letting their friends take the test so that we all get 100% on Monday. I cannot emphasize enough how okay I am with that. Why would I hide it? That means that we have 3 more days to do higher order thinking things like make web pages or program it or do all these, make a video. I now have all that time back.
Right, right. And if you think about it, have anybody that's ever tried to do some of the higher level thinking type of activities and the kids don't have the base of basic foundation under it, then it's a mess and you're not getting anything out of it anyway. So I sort of see this like building a pyramid. You've got to get your foundation in place. And once they've gotten the reps and they have that lower level foundational stuff.
It goes.
Yeah, yeah.
You start saying things like this. Table 4, you're designing next week's Iron Chef. I hope it's a goodie.
Right. Yeah.
And meanwhile, Table 5 got the highest score on last week's Iron Chef, so they're making a quizzes during the Iron Chef activity when the other kids are doing the fancy learning. The permutations are off the hook. I want to give a shout out to Lisa Nowakowski. She's got a thing she's doing called Math Reps, and it's a riff on 8 parts. And it's the same basic idea except with math. So what do we do in math? This is what I remember from Catholic school. First week of fractions was like fractions. Dude, I can rock that until we get to 16 as a denominator. Then I start to come like next week, what are we doing? Unlike fractions. Dude, I can rock that until we get to 8 as a denominator. So am I really that good at it? No, I'm only good at the introduction and the next 2 days. By Friday, I'm like, oh my God. But new lesson. Next week, unlike Monday, Tuesday, nailing it. Thursday, I'm like, hanging on for a prayer. And then next week, what are we doing? Improper. And then a week of multiplication and a week of division, and we out. So if I can survive 5 weeks a year of fractions and not master any one, all I got to do is get out of that intact. And next year, I'm going to get the same thing. What Lisa's done is taken just like the 8 parts concept. She's put about 15 different math content items And the only variable every day, ready for this? The variable of the day is the number.
Number. I knew it.
The
Yes.
number.
I love
That's
that.
all that varies. And kids are so bugged with math right now in general because we've been really pretty bad at teaching it. And I'm not calling out individual teachers. I know math teachers that work their tails off, but I'm not talking about how hard we work. I'm talking about how human children feel about doing math. Because what's the number one thing people ask when they get to college? Number one, first question. Ready for this? This is my logic. How much math?
How much math?
Second question. How soon till I don't have to take math ever again? So we've got a nation full of people getting to college going, is this the final math class? Because I've been waiting for this. So 13 years of work are basically going where? Look up the stats for the number of people that say I'm not a math person. So
Right.
at least
Right.
what got going is instead of teaching each of those packages as a once a week occurrence, right? She puts all 13 into a singular activity that just repeats for 4 weeks.
Yep. Yep.
And she's got her kids where she says in about a week, they move from 1 hour to about 10 minutes. And they like it because they can do it. Notice the affective filter disappearing. They like it because they can do it. They start esteeming math. If they can do those 20 different operations in 10 or 12 minutes a day, what's that give Lisa? A lot of time to do things like 3 acts and deep dives and other things. And that changes everything. So again, this is this idea of a protocol. And I would like to put it under like the 80-20 rule, right? Where 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts and building that base. If you can have, and this is what I experienced with my kids with 8 parts, then they went on to sentence parts. And in sentence parts, it's the same workflow again. Here's 20 different kinds of sentences. There's a funny picture. Go, right? So that's my lesson plan until about Thanksgiving. And people say, what do you do after that? We can write anything we want. Because my 6th graders can drop in a positive like that, or a semicolon sentence, or a compound. I can go, need 2 compound sentences. Let her rip. They get the verbiage. They get the academic verbiage because of the rips. So the second half of my year is almost entirely higher order thinking because I've built myself that time. I'm not just on one. Now I'm not, well, welcome to lesson 1.20 because you've all survived through 1.1 to 1.19. So more of the same. It's a totally different look and feel.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we've covered several of these protocols. I'm going back through my list and I'm seeing the worst PowerPoint ever. I'm seeing the Iron Chef, the 8 points, the Fast and the Curious, and the math reps. And so the question I'd like to ask you to kind of wrap all of this up is I've been real big on this saying recently of, the whole, if you give a man a fish, you teach him, or you feed him for a day, but if you teach him how to fish, okay. Teach us how to fish.
He'll be warm for the rest of his life.
There you go. I like that. So if we want to do this and we don't teach math and we don't teach, English the way that some of your examples were, how can we either develop these ourselves or find other ones that other people are doing?
Well, the probably the quickest and easiest way is just start chatting with myself on Twitter. Marlena Hebern at M Hebern, Hebern. Corey Orlando's another one at Corey Orlando 1, because together we are Corey Orlando and Jon. See my pun? Lisa Nowakowski, which is Noah Techie at Noah Techie. So there's a kind of a burgeoning think group here that we can connect folks with. And then Lisa, Marlena and I we just finished a book that's in the final edits of, we're calling it the Edu-Protocols Field Guide.
Oh, wow.
The idea is, it's like when you go out into the field, right? Here's a guide of how to do things. And it's got 14 of these protocols built out in it. And we have a primary edition. So there's a variation. So primary is a different animal, right? Iron Chef looks different for an AP class than it does for a 3rd grade class. But if people, and the whole cool part of this is nobody needs to buy the book to get the protocols. The protocols are already out there. Iron Chef is out there, 8 Parts is out there, Sentence Parts is out there, Math Reps they're already out there. The book just gives kind of the story and the back end. And frankly, I mean, I will be happy if people buy the book, but what's more important is Marlene and I really wanted to get down our body of work there so that people, if we get hit by a truck one of these days, it doesn't just all go
Right.
into the ether, right? Like our body of work just would disappear.
Mhm.
So, checking in with us on Twitter would be the fastest and easiest. We have an event coming up this spring with my work at Q called Q Bold, where we have a lot of this kind of stuff. And you were at the one last year. I
It
can't
was
wait.
awesome. Yes.
Where we've basically taken the good old Madeline Hunter 7-step lesson design, because one of our operating ideas at Bold is that, people that work at Applebee's aren't not actually chefs, and I'm hoping that somebody doesn't just call me a bad man for saying that. But in general, at Applebee's, you're going to be heating up and warming up other people's recipes. My fear is that if the Applebee's boxes of food stopped showing up, I'm not sure that the people that are the cooks there would necessarily just start making stuff from scratch.
Mhm.
Notice I said necessarily. There may certainly be people that can cook at Applebee's, but that's not the corporate lesson plan, right?
Mhm.
And so what we did was, when we were designing the Bold event, which stands for Blended Online Lesson Design, we were really looking at how can we re-energize people to start creating their own stuff. Because if somebody's been listening to our conversation and they're still calling BS on us at this point and saying, I don't know about all this, I would say one of the other things I argue with people is that No Child Left Behind did irreparable damage to our careers, because it was this you will only teach page 14, you will only teach page 15, really hurt our profession, because we lost that idea of the 7-step lesson plan has all of these elements that you create experiences for children. You don't just I don't begrudge people who may be selling things on Teachers Pay Teachers, but I'm worried that that's the state of our profession, that when they
Yeah.
don't know what to do, Teachers Pay Teachers, here's a couple handouts on planets or
Yep.
multiplication, and in a lot of cases it's very basic stuff that just has more decoration in the sidebar. It's just
Mhm.
pretty.
Mhm.
That's not really owning the process of teaching and learning. I would argue that to teach somebody how to tell time, even in another language, that giving them 5 worksheet uh, on clock faces is not really going to teach them how to tell time.
No.
So part of the idea there is that we took the Madeline Hunter lesson plan, but what we realized is, since we've lost Madeline Hunter as a living being, right? She died a while back. That one-to-one has really come into its own. And now, what independent practice with a Minecraft classroom might look really different than what it might look on paper.
Mhm.
And the Madeline Hunter lesson plan doesn't have to be lockstep for one-to-many. You can actually bring in elements like quizzes or Socrative or Google Slides
Mhm.
or Flipgrid, and make them far more interactive and techie based. So that's part of the idea behind that. That'd be a great event for somebody who wanted to check out.
There you go. Love that. This has been great. This is
Did you give
awesome.
me
And
the
then
hurry up signal? Were you trying to do that right down
I
there?
was trying to do that very subtly because we're pushing up on an hour here. So yeah,
Oh, I saw it, Matt Miller.
I know. I know. Yeah. I didn't think you were going to call me out on the video about it, but hey, that's okay. I can live with that. So
I'm a pure honesty guy. It was there. Everybody could see it. They knew what was happening.
Yep, that's true. All right, Jon, this is great. If you're watching this, we've got tons of resources linked up on Jon's speaker page. If you're at ditchsummit.com, if you're watching this on YouTube, then head on over to ditchsummit.com. Check out all the links of the different stuff that Jon's been talking about and where to get more of him. So, Jon, as always, it has been a pleasure. I appreciate you coming and helping us out.
Super honored. And anybody that's listening, all my sessions come with free lifetime tech support. So if somebody needs follow up, just drop me an email or a tweet and I'm on it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.